It's working.
I'm going to start my day over right now.
Well, it couldn't. Yeah. I mean, hit the reset button.
Yeah.
Let's kind of, let's gather our thoughts. Let's become one with everything.
Let's be one with everything. I want to say I like your scruff that you didn't shave.
Thank you.
I've noticed.
I'm going for a look.
It's kind of badass.
Thank you.
Which is like badass, but even more badass. So.
My wife was laughing because I was like, yeah, I was... Because I'm not like, me, I'm not like a fashion guy at all.
I always think of you as a fashionista.
But somewhere in the past week, I stumbled upon a website. It's like 500 looks for men in their 50s. And I was like, all right, well, let's see what I'm not doing right. And it was just about everything.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not a style master either.
So I'm gonna let the scruff grow. And
scruff is cool.
I ordered a couple of things from the interwebs.
All right.
No. I don't know what I'm doing.
I don't know. I've been wearing the same jeans since I'm in high school.
It was easy when I went to work because I know what I have to wear to go to work.
Put on your uniform.
The suit and the all that. But now I've been basically in my house for like almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to get a little too much leisure wear
and
thing going on.
You can see it on the streets.
You
people
can.
Come into my store and you're like, that person hasn't changed that outfit in 2.5 years. And
right.
You can see it on the. But we are going to start our day over.
Okay, here we go. Let's
Internet
press
is
the
back
reset
up.
button.
Reset. And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat X.
And I'm Mike R.
And boy, do we have a show for you. Today on RMA, part 2 of our groundbreaking, paradigm-shifting, Lollapalooza breakdown analysis of 12 smart things to do when the booze and drugs are gone, and the debut of Monksters Speak, a new segment pulled from the deep, dark recesses of the RMA private group. All this and more today on a very special edition of RMA.
So, have you given much thought to the new segment? Because I haven't.
Yeah.
Oh, first off,
Yeah.
can I just say happy Sober October?
Sobertober.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's the thing. This is the month where people who are sober curious sometimes decide to take some time off. So we welcome the Sober October people.
I feel like they do that for like for every month. There's a word that's sober that rhymes with. It's like Sober September.
No, but October's the big one because like
Dry January.
Who's that guy from the Rogan? Joe Rogan always does Sober October. He stops smoking weed. He stops drinking for the whole month of October. No DMT.
Ayahuasca.
I would just like to say that if alcohol is playing a bigger role in your life than you want it to, if you want to see if living an alcohol-free life can help you in some way, if you want to support and inspire others in your life to be their best, most authentic selves.
What are you reading?
And if you want to lose a little weight before the holiday rolls around, maybe give Sober October a try.
What is that? A prepared statement from SAMHSA or something?
I don't know. It's something I found on the internet.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
I mean, seriously, because the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Yeah. And if that step is taking the month of October away from the booze, go for it.
I think. And how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Oh, yeah. I always say that to my son. He hates me when I say that.
Yeah. My kids do not like all of those bromides.
Are they bromides?
Bromides.
Yeah.
First, we'd like to welcome all the new people listening here in the USA and around the world.
That's so cheesy.
We love hearing from you, so please, if you like what you hear, write a review on your favorite listening platform and share it with a friend. Where can they find us, Mike?
Really? All right. You can find us at middleagesrecovery.com, where you can listen, submit your story, buy awesome merch, and get in touch with us if you so desire.
I rewrote it.
You did.
Last night.
Great reviews will be read on the air. Please log on to your favorite podcast app. Apple Podcasts is best. I hate Apple Podcasts. They fucking suck.
Yeah.
But they're good for going and leaving reviews.
Brought to you by Apple Podcasts.
Say something nice to massage Mike's delicate ego.
That's,
were you supposed to say that?
No, I just wanted you to.
The discussion continues 24/7, 365
That's it.
on our private Facebook group found conveniently through our public-facing Facebook page. Are you trying to fuck me up with that?
Some alliteration.
We screen new members. That we do. And the discussion is unsearchable, so we can all feel comfortable, safe, and happy.
Yes. You will not be 13-stepped on our group.
Yeah. Buy a T-shirt also. We have awesome new designs available through middleagesrecovery.com shopping page. And if you buy one, Mike will be sure to eventually mail it to you. I mail them out within days that they come in. But I will say this, all of you fat monksters out there.
Oh, big boned. Come on.
We have an awful lot of... Yes, I'm sorry.
It's glandular.
I get in trouble now when I say something like that. Listen, and this is coming from a guy who lost like 75 pounds. I used to be a big fat bastard.
Dude.
Yeah. We have lots of extra large and extra large sizes to fit your swarthy frames.
Did we do triple? I think Jeff D.
Yeah, we do. We have a lot of big shirts.
Recommended that we get bigger shirts.
Yeah. But and there's some stickers you can buy too.
Stickers.
So buy some stickers.
Why my stickers?
We're getting bigger, man. The group is getting bigger. The listeners are getting more numerous.
Yeah, and this is why I wanted to do a segment about the Monksters, something from, because what I'm noticing on the private group now is there's actual people on there actually having conversations.
It's amazing.
So it's really cool because, and it's not, we don't sit around and like pick apart our show. It's like, it's a support group. And I try and get some discussions going, I try and like move it along.
Yeah.
And so we were getting such good answers to stuff. I thought, people aren't really getting all the way to, from my analysis anyway, to the Week in Weird. And we're thinking about replacing the segment. If you love Week in Weird, write to us at mikeart@middleagesrecovery.com.
Why do you always give out my email address? You never give out yours.
I think it's funny. Mine's anonymous. But seriously, folks.
I like Week in Weird because where else would I find out about cryptozoology and the latest thing that's been found on the surface of Mars?
It's near and dear to my heart. I'm a huge paranormal radio fan. I've been listening to things like Coast to Coast AM since I'm in college. And like I said, I like to talk about it, but nobody else seems to care.
I mean, our audience is like people who've taken a lot of acid, I think, perhaps more disposed to believe in Bigfoot.
Well, today's Week in Weird is a doozy. Let me just say that.
Did you pull that from the group also?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because I was thinking this is our last Week in Weird, so I wanted to do it.
Don't be ridiculous.
But where can they find us, Mike?
Wait, I think I already said you can find us at middleagesrecovery.com. But what I want you all to do is to tell us your story, because everybody who is listening to this has a story, and it's probably a doozy. So why don't you go to the website, middleagesrecovery.com, fill out the form that you can find there without too much hunting and pecking, and tell us what led you to the point you are at now in your life.
It could be a lunk story or a shit story.
Yeah.
I like shit stories.
Well, you know what they say, brevity is the soul of wit. So shorter might be, more amenable for broadcast. But, screw that. Don't spare any details.
I want to know it all.
We'll edit out the stuff that we think is irrelevant. Trust us.
Yes. We're Facebook your ass. All right.
We have one.
So we have one.
Look at this.
Tell us your story.
Oh, no.
Oh, shnikes. That's the okay. I'll read. Do you want to read your story?
Oh, yeah.
Being a woman in your 40s.
I am a woman in my 40s.
Yeah.
Most of the adults in my family were alcoholics, and drinking was very normalized and celebrated, even though it led to very, very emphasized in the original, obvious negative outcomes. When I had my first drink in high school, I had a very similar experience to what Mike described himself having. I felt like I had found the magic elixir to finally let me feel comfortable in my own skin and relax like other people seem to be able to do. I started drinking heavily in college. Every week. Sorry. It is allergy season.
Right.
I had grown up with some significant trauma, and once I started drinking in college, I ended up getting into many more traumatic situations. This led to more drinking, of course. My drinking was very problematic when I was in college, but since I supported myself financially and I was able to continue working and going to school full time, I was not forced by anyone to stop. That's interesting. Daily drinking continued after college until I found This Naked Mind a couple of years ago. I've heard that a miracle is just a shift in perception, and this is how I see the change I experienced through This Naked Mind. This is so important, that sentence right there.
Yeah.
A miracle is a shift in perception.
Yeah.
That's why miracles happen in sobriety all the time in recovery. People shift their perception.
Yeah, and even in AA, they talk about a psychic change. And I experienced that as well. For me, it wasn't a white light, in 1 second, all of a sudden. But over time, I began to notice that my views were just completely different. Almost like there's a different pilot in this, ship.
In this meat suit that you're wearing.
Yeah.
So you weren't like Bill W., you weren't tripping on belladonna when you had your spiritual experience?
No, I mean, when I did take acid, it was spiritual, but but my sober white light moment, happened over time.
Right. But I found that I would have I'm continuing the story now, just in case you know. But I found that I would have difficulty staying completely sober, even with the perception change. My friends and family are still very steeped in alcohol culture, which has me around alcohol a lot. Your podcast and the RMA Facebook page have been very helpful to me, and I feel like I am on the path again. I also really love the books you suggest. I feel like I am in a recovery community for the first time.
Yeah.
I think the books you suggest and the reflection involved in reading them is finally helping me do the work people always reference in recovery talk.
Yeah.
I've been to therapy for years, so I thought I had been doing the work. Thank you so much, and keep up the good work, please.
Thank you so much for that. It's really, really amazing to me and very cool and humbling that we've been able to get people to coalesce around the show and, just to form a safe place. And, I got a lot of Facebook communities in recovery when I finally got over my fear, the Dopey Nation being the big one and several others. But, I mean, I thought it would be really cool to have a nice, intimate, therapeutic community of people who are kind of along the same lines as we are. And it's really cool. We've got a review. The review is so helpful and fun.
Did that print out on yours?
It did on mine.
Thank God. I'm frantically scrolling, trying to find it.
It's from Liz BS 2002. These guys are so genuine. I feel like I'm sitting around with them having an NA, a non-alcoholic beer, and just talking about recovery. Their stories are great, not like other podcasts where the hosts catch up for the first part and it's mostly irrelevant drivel. Isn't that what we do?
And that's the thing. I'm like, should she have been reviewing it? Was she trying to review a different podcast?
I think so. We do a lot of irrelevant drivel. Thank you.
We're doing it right now.
They are always talking about recovery one way or another. That's true. They are busy professional guys with families taking time to help others in this journey. Thanks, Mike and Nat, and thank you, Liz.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
No, I've never been referred to as professional before, so very, very thankful for that.
We're professional recovery podcasters now.
Yeah, I mean, look, if people on average are listening to 65% of each of our shows, which
you're really hung up on that.
I am, because what does that mean? So people get 60% of the way to the show, and then most of them drop off.
Yeah, because
they don't want to hear Weekend
Because
Weird.
our shows are long.
Because it's all about me. Don't you see? They just don't like me.
Here's the thing.
What?
Okay, so I listen to Dopey every week, right? I listen to Dopey on Saturday mornings. When I lace on my sneakers, I go out for a run. Now, Dave could have a show that's an hour, 2 hours, whatever. When the run is over, I press stop on the Dopey, and that's it. I'm done. And I think a lot of people who have commutes, who listen to us on a commute, they'll drive there, whatever, 40-something minutes. Well, when they get there, they turn it off, and that's it. Well,
so, I know.
I don't know. But I don't think it's a commentary on the Weekend Weird. Everybody loves the Weekend Weird.
I want the show to be good all the way through, and I want people to like it.
I think it is.
Because I'm a people pleaser, and we'll talk about...
These are a bunch of addicts and alcoholics. They have no attention span. What are you expecting out of it, people?
I had a pretty crazy... I always say this, but the week seems to get crazier and crazier. So my last outpatient rehab place that I finally graduated from is in our town, and I was there about 2 years. When I had my OD, I was there. And then I stayed another year after that. So I got to know these people very well. I still keep in touch, because incidentally through my church, we do a lot of charity work with them. So it's really close to home.
Yeah, that is close.
Because of anonymity by law, they don't know that I'm there.
Right.
So it's been almost 4 years. And I get a call at my shop from my old therapist.
Yes. Was this yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay.
This was yesterday. I hadn't planned on talking about this at all. Why is she calling? First, she just wanted to hear how I was doing. And, she was saying how much, she got out of our sessions, which is kind of funny because I'm weird. Supposed to get...
Right.
I really got a lot out of, talking to you. And I'm like, well, thank you. I'm doing great. She goes, I know you're probably going to say no, but I've been asked to ask you... but from the director, if you would speak at a fundraiser for us.
Hey.
And tell your story because it's so inspirational and you're a pillar in the community and blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, wow. I was really flattered. And it made me think about, what I have accomplished, because I'm always sort of self-deprecating. But and then she said, I know that this could be a really big ask for you because I'm in the community.
Yeah.
A lot of the people on the board of that place go to my church, are my customers.
Right.
And I was thinking, you know what? It's not a shame thing as much as it's a privacy issue.
Yeah, right.
Because my family and people don't understand.
No. The stigma still exists and it's still very real.
Yeah. So, and it sucks because I would love to say a bunch of nice things and tell the people that are supposed to donate to them how important it is and how, everybody should have a chance. And, so what I recommended, I said, let me write something. Mm-hmm. I'll write my experience in an anonymous letter. And you can read it.
I think that's a good suggestion.
And that's what we're going to do. And as my old therapist, she can't stop therapizing me. And she was like, this could be really good for your recovery. You're going to write it out. You should think about all you've accomplished. And it was a nice conversation.
That was a freebie, right?
Yeah, it was free. And it was funny because she brought up, we had a few contentious moments where I was screaming and cursing at her. And
yesterday?
Not yesterday, but over the course of therapy.
Right.
And she's a nice old lady, but she was pushing me. Sometimes therapists, they want you, because I have a pretty stone cold face, in therapy. I used to. And so they push your buttons until they get an emotion in it. So one time she really pissed me off.
Like your kids.
Yeah. And she brought that up. She goes, well, we had our, rough times. And I was like, yeah, it's all part of the game, Barbara. I get it.
Right. I
said, you're not doing your job if I'm not getting emotional. Anyway, it was just really cool to kind of like look at reflecting back on, what maybe doesn't feel like an accomplishment all the time because life is difficult. It is.
It's a huge accomplishment.
It is.
I mean, compared to where you were a few years ago, Nat, I mean, thank God, right? I mean,
thank you.
Something that okay. So this blew my mind a little when you told me this yesterday, because I'm like, okay, it didn't blow my mind till later in the day, but I was like, okay, well, that's really cool. Nat's therapist reaching out, wants him to do this. So we had that conversation yesterday around noon that somebody offered. At about 5 o'clock, I checked my email, and in my inbox is an email from a lawyer from California who also is on the board of this nonprofit organization that helps lawyers who are struggling with alcohol and substance abuse and just general poor health conditions.
Right.
And she asked me to speak at a conference in January, a virtual one. I guess they're still doing virtual. But because she heard me on Annie Grace.
Oh, my God.
And she wanted to put a panel together. And she's like, I might be able to get Annie Grace on the panel. And I was like,
wow.
And I was like, do I really want to put myself out there? And I went through a lot of the stuff that going on. I mean, this is a little more attenuated for me, but I am sure that there are lawyers in this group that will know me.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
I know of a couple that I suspect are in recovery that I've worked with, recently. But there's one thing in AA, you know me, I don't ascribe to a ton of the stuff that they say.
Right.
But one thing that I remember reading somewhere was like, say yes to everything.
Yep.
until you have so many yeses and that you have to say no or something along those lines.
You're never supposed to turn down requests for speaking or making coffee.
Right. But I think it was bigger than that in AA. I think it was also like, when you're trying to rebuild your sober life, say yes to all these opportunities and events. I don't know if it was from there or from
I've heard that
false graph revelation or something Joseph now said. So I wrote her back and I was like, sure, I'll do it.
You're doing it?
Yeah, I'm going to do it.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I told her to send me. I told her to send me the email with the information. I was a little hesitant at first, but I think I'm going to do it because
that's really cool. It's nice.
But isn't that weird that the universe dropped that on both of us in the same day?
It is.
Like of all the days,
it is.
That's like some weird synchronicity, don't you think?
Well, we are synchronized.
Yeah, but to the point where other people are offering us opportunities on the same day that are very similar to one another.
Yeah, and it's such a trip to be asked to speak, because I go around thinking, that I don't have anything that profound to say, or I always think of other people's struggles and how much worse it is and all of that. But it feels nice to be like someone wants to hear your perspective. And they think you did something good. It's like,
speaking of doing something good, a couple weeks ago now, you sent a fellow off to rehab. Any updates on that situation?
Yeah, just to be clear, and he may be listening because I actually sent him this podcast. So, Stephen, if you're listening, it was really cool to meet you. I didn't get him into... So, this is a friend of a friend, and he was really just having a rough time. She didn't know what to do. I think I talked about this a little bit. And I sort of, from a distance was like, just giving her suggestions. Like, here's what I did. Here's what sounds like would work for him. And you give those kinds of advice. You give that kind of advice out, and you half expect it's just not going to happen.
Right.
This particular gentleman has done it. He, went to the medical detox, and he went to the same rehab that I went to, and I was sort of, I gave him a book, the Just for Today book to, thumb through and put my number in it, and that was like 22 days ago or something. In any case, he also, I had some of his belongings at my shop because my friend asked me to hold them for him because he didn't have anywhere else to go, and so he ultimately had to come pick up his stuff, and I got to meet him. And it was just really cool. Like you could see in his eyes that he's like my age. We're a lot alike too, which is weird. Like we have a lot in common. And it was just really satisfying to see. But it wasn't like, yay, look what I did. I really had this feeling of I'm so happy that he did this. And that he's healthier, and just this sad. Even though I don't know him, he's really not we're friends now, but basically a stranger. But just to see, to hear where he was, and then to see where he's at now, and the sort of vigor that he's got in his voice about recovery. And it's not his first time in recovery, but you can see there was a change. And does that mean he's never going to relapse again? And no, who knows? I hope he does.
Hopefully not, Steve.
But he,
hang in there, buddy.
You're on a great trajectory, and he's going to meetings, and it's really amazing to see, and it's a trip.
Awesome.
And what a blessing, and I get to meet him. I was just very nervous to be too close to something like this. So when it first started happening, I was very uncomfortable because I'm like, I don't know if I can, if it triggers me, but I kept, a decent boundary and space, and it's a good feeling, and that's your 12-step. That's your carrying the message, hopefully. And I plan to, keep in touch with him. I told him call me anytime, and I mean it.
Yeah, that's the best part of this kind of thing.
I said my phone is, and this is what guys have said to me when I started. My phone is on 24/7 for recovery related.
Right.
You're having an emergency, or you need to talk to somebody. I don't care what time it is. You call me because it's helping me too. To help someone else.
That's right.
So you're working on your own recovery by, being there. So it was really cool.
Awesome.
And I'm really happy for him. And if you're listening, nice to meet you. I got to ask him about, because I went to that same rehab. That's why I recommended it. And he got the Vivitrol shot,
Super.
And that's just going to increase his chances. And it's not a magic bullet, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that was very cool. But you did something on Saturday that's, I don't know, worth mentioning?
I don't know.
What did you do?
So, I take pictures of birds.
You do?
And stuff. That's one of my hobbies.
You and Sergeant Slaughter have that in common.
We do. They were having a raptor day. The Vanderbilts, the big family Morgan was steel. Vanderbilts were the railroad or something?
I don't know what they did. I know they have a museum that we go to.
They do, and a planetarium.
Yeah.
And it was originally like Cornelius Vanderbilt's planetarium.
It's amazing.
And now it's turned into a planetarium that you can go and buy tickets.
There's a natural history museum on the premises.
There is. Have you ever gone in there?
Yeah.
It's like a little microcosm of the one in the city with the stuffed animals.
It's really cool.
It's awesome.
It's like some guy's old weird mansion filled with stuffed tigers and stuff.
Yeah. It is totally off the wall. But they run programs there every once in a while. And this past Saturday, they ran a raptor program. Raptors being like hawks and kestrels and owls and, eagles, that sort of thing.
Yeah, a lot of people don't even know that it's there, but it is very cool.
It is. So I took 2/3 of the kids there, and they ran around and played tag, which is nice to see my son Jack sort of having a good time since he's been kind of miserable at the school. I've mentioned that he's going to, but I think he's getting a little better with that. Like he got very excited. They're doing a trip to Gettysburg in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, cool!
Yeah,
most haunted places on Earth.
Yeah, for sure. Right?
It's spooky.
68,000 people died there in 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know. It was a good day for hawking or whatever. But there's something weird about taking pictures of hawks and things when they're on a perch.
It's very weird.
I don't like those kind of. You mean in general?
I was going to say it's extremely strange.
I'm just talking about when they're
following the hawks around with a camera. But
listen, I consider myself to be like a National Geographic explorer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Probably that's in my own mind. Yeah.
I like your photographs. I think they're really good.
Thank you.
Well, that's cool. I had I always talk about my Sunday fun day. Now, this Sunday, I had so much fun that I nearly killed myself. I was so tired and beat up. I was almost sick on Monday. But I really felt like I had to make up for lost time. But it was just so crazy. We had church, and then we had, we went to the park, and then I took Noah to see Shang-Chi, which is the new Marvel karate movie.
Oh, that's what it's actually called?
Yeah.
It sounded like you were making fun of Chinese language.
Shang-Chi. So that was my phone.
Was that good?
And so, I wanted to
That's got the lady from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yes, I love
Michelle
her.
Yeoh.
I wanted to give it my review, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars. It's very exciting. I took my 10-year-old to it, and it was really cool. 4 out of 5 stars. I recommend it. But by the end of that day, I thought I had done a good thing. I took my son. We had a Daddy and Noah day. And he was like, I want to meet my friends at the park. And I'm like, dude, really? And I had a really bad headache. I ran out of blood pressure medication, and I was getting a blood pressure headache. And
what is that?
It's like if your blood pressure gets too high, and if I'm not taking my blood pressure medication and I have salty stuff, you get a headache.
Huh.
Because it's like, you have a stroke if you have too high.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I have really bad blood pressure. But, and so I was like, fine. I parked the car at the park. It was beautiful out. He met these girls, his girlfriend. And
he's a little player, your kid.
Yeah, he's a funny kid. And, but I was so tired, and I sat there and I listened to one of my books in the car. And then when it was time to go, I called him, and he was just really nasty. He was kind of showing off, I feel like, to his friends.
That's what they do.
And he said some really nasty shit. And then but I didn't say anything. I was just I go, what are you talking about, man? And then he's hangs up on me. And then I'm like, okay, how am I going to deal with this? And I was almost ready to just drive home, clear his room out, take his computer out, turn off his phone. I'm like, I'm not even going to scream. I am just going to show
hit him where it hurts,
where it's at. And I think he must have sensed, or his friends might have said, I can't believe you just said that to your father.
Right.
because he never apologizes. He's not an apologizer.
Yeah.
Which is annoying, but he called back. It was like a couple of minutes as I was marching to go find him and then like physically remove him and embarrass the shit out of him.
Right.
He called and was like, hey, Daddy. I'm like, hey, Noah. And he's like, sorry about that. I just really want to hang out later. I'm like, it's okay. I said, but we don't talk like that, not especially not to your dad, And he goes, yeah, I know. I'm really sorry. I'm like, it's all right.
Well, good. He apologized.
He apologized, but by the end of that day, I was so emotionally and physically just beat up, man. Like,
what'd you do? Smoke a doobie, go to bed?
I mean, that's what I would have done. I mean, and this type of stuff happens to everybody, It's like, this is just the thorns of life type of thing. And, man, I would have gone straight to 7-Eleven, gotten myself a Four Loko, and, downed it before I got home so I could at least have a little buzz on before I had to deal with...
What's a Four Loko?
It's just...
I've heard of these things.
It's like it's a malt liquor. It's like a very sweet...
Like Oldie 800?
Yeah, it used to be like energy drink with lots of alcohol and sugary. But I don't know if they're still doing that. I feel like it got pulled for legal reasons or something. But I just wanted to... because as I'm experiencing this, and this is something that happens because of this podcast, I always start thinking of things in terms of, in terms of the podcast and what I could say about it. And it just helps me to process it.
Well, that might be a little bit of your Buddhism light too, that you've been listening to. What's his face? Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
Tolle, who's probably tells you to think before or be in the moment and not react. Don't be so reactive, right?
Right. But I'm experiencing this feeling of like, it made me think of having a sober bottom, which is something people have talked about in the past. I've never been sober long enough to have one, but basically it's that feeling of being at an emotional bottom and just like feeling like shit and not wanting to, go on, but you're not using. And a lot of people report that they, experience these emotional bottoms, and it's coming out of it without relapsing. Because if you relapse, you just call it a relapse.
Right.
But if you hit the bottom while you're sober and come out of it still sober, you hit an emotional bottom.
I see. But I mean, some would say that that's just kind of life, right? I mean, like, people have these cycles of life, and depression is something that can certainly exist outside of the existence of alcohol or drugs. I mean, it's definitely, depression and anxiety are not necessarily always tied in with using.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you can things can become overwhelming and
absolutely. I think it's one of those things that they give it a name in recovery, because so many people who have long-term sobriety, when you first start having these feelings and start feeling this way, and you almost feel hungover the next day, you need to just put a name to it. Sort of like when you're exorcising a demon. Once you find the name of the demon that's possessing the person, you have power over it to bring it back to spooky season. Like
Beelzebub?
Yeah. So it was really interesting. It made me think out loud, sort of like, I wonder, has anybody out there experienced a sober bottom, and how do you get out of it? I mean, the next day I felt like I really was like sick. I wasn't myself when I got to my other job. Even my coworkers were like, "Are you okay?" That type of thing.
Right.
And I couldn't shake it off, man, the whole day until I went to bed that night, and then the next day I was better.
Maybe you're overtired too. You've been burning the candle at both ends.
So my Sunday fun day turns out to be not as much fun as it could have been, but I survived. And here I am.
Glad you're still with us, Nat.
That was Sunday.
So, just shifting gears, I made the mistake of donating some money to a couple political candidates at one point in the last few years.
Are you getting emails?
Worse, I'm getting phone calls. But I'm getting phone calls from the actual candidates, which is always a little strange. Like, in my old podcast that I used to have, I would occasionally interview someone who was running for something locally here on the island. And I interviewed a woman who was running for Congress against Tom Suozzi, who's our current congressman. And that was like one of her first press things. So she's always been sort of like, reaches out to me when she's making a move to do something else, whatever. So I picked up the phone, and I never pick up the phone. I don't know why I answered the phone this time, but I answered it. And she's like, "Hi, it's so-and-so." And I said, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And she's, going on and on about running for Congress again and so forth. And I said, well, how can I help you? And it was okay. It was money. And
of course.
So I'm like, sure, And she's like, are you still doing the podcast? And I said, I thought for a second, and I said, you know what? I'm not doing that podcast anymore, but I am doing another one. And then she says, what's it about? And I was like, I said, it's a friend of mine and myself started a podcast to help people who are in middle ages or middle-aged recover from drug and alcohol addiction. And there was just this silence in the phone. And then she's like,
you said that.
I did. And I said, and we just passed our 50,000th download this past week.
Right. Back it up with a little, hey, this is no bullshit here.
So I said, so I'm still in the podcast game. And, but it's strange because it's not like I don't walk around town advertising that we do this podcast to everybody I meet, and it's especially not to people who are running for Congress. But, I put it out there, and then when I hung up, I felt really good that somebody, knows about that and knows that that's an issue that I'm concerned about. And maybe if she, if she's is going to have some power, and then, maybe I'll reach out to her and say, you remember that podcast that I told you I was doing, now let's, and that money that I gave you, now let's start talking about getting some funding for addiction and recovery and into some bills,
That's great. And that's what I was planning on doing speaking at this outpatient place that I was going to speak at the fundraiser, because if I'm speaking directly to people who are supposed to give money, I really wanted them to hear how important it is, and what it was for me and all of that. And so that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad I did it. Conversely, though, I was talking to my boss the other day, and my boss doesn't know that I quit drinking. We talk on the phone a few times a week. He's more like a friend than a boss at this point.
That's cool.
But still, like, it always comes up like we hired some new people at work, and we were talking about it. He's like, yeah, and then we all have to get together and have, we'll have beers at some point. And I was like, yeah, it sounds great, man. I wonder, and I'm starting talking to them about alcohol and beer, and I'm not mentioning that I'm not drinking. And I'm like, why am I doing that?
I've done that before too. It's this feeling that, like, when somebody says that to you, they're attempting to, like, generate some camaraderie.
Yes.
And you don't want to throw cold water on that.
Sorry, I stopped drinking 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm an alcoholic, asshole. Now you've triggered me. I'm going to go fucking drink. Like, I get it, but when you do finally say it, like, I've had a couple of these interactions with other dads and stuff, and when I finally just be like, oh man, I haven't had a drink in 4 years, and they're always like, oh, I'm like, yeah, but we can still have fun.
That's really, you just reminded me of something.
Yeah.
And you're right. And I actually, with this thing at work, I planned it out. When I go back, how I'm gonna sell it.
You're just gonna show up
at the conferences,
right? They're gonna think you're drunk.
I thought, like, maybe I'll do what I did, before COVID, in the few months between when I quit and at the end of July and when COVID happened the following March. I went to a few conferences, and what I did was I got myself a little glass of ginger ale on the rocks with a lemon twist, and everybody thought it was scotch or whatever. I'd fill up an empty beer bottle with water, drink that. I would get the beer from the bar, pour it out, put water in it.
Nice.
Right?
That's a good trick.
Yeah. Except when people are like, hey, you need another one? Yeah,
here's your shot.
But, so I figured, I planned on this time just saying, right before the pandemic, I quit for a little while because I was trying to lose some weight. And then when the pandemic happened, I decided I wasn't going to go continue drinking because so many people were having such issues with it. And then I just haven't had a drink since because I feel so good. That's kind of how I was going to play that.
Yeah.
Well, it's good. People don't really need to, know the details,
and we get so wrapped up thinking, what are they going to think? And what are they don't care.
Nobody cares.
Who
is it that said if people only realized how little other people spend thinking about you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
most people are so self-absorbed, they don't think about you much at all,
And that's a great segue. What we're getting into this book that we're discussing today, eventually. 12 smart things to do when booze and drugs don't work.
I have one more. One more little thing, and I apologize.
We have to,
I know.
Go on.
It's because it was
get it out.
It was
get it all.
My
out.
son's school had an open house the other night. My son Jack.
Yes.
So I go to the open house, and I run into a couple that I knew 15 years ago. In my other life. I was married before my wife passed away, and so on. She was friends with my late wife, right, and she's married to a cop, and used to hang out with them all the time. The husband, great guy, but a big boozer. Yeah. So we used to drink together a lot, and we start to talk about the school and everything. How we haven't seen each other in a while, and then we stand outside in the hallway, and he goes, "Yeah, I quit drinking 10 years ago."
Huh.
And I was like, I quit drinking 2 years ago.
Me too. That's so cool.
It was just so strange that he just popped that out as like the first thing. Yeah. Maybe because his memory of the time that we spent together was a lot of hoisting glasses at various
to make sure
bars.
That you weren't going to
offer him out for a beer, maybe. Yeah. Anyway,
it's
sorry.
happening
That just
more
popped
and
into
more
my,
and more.
So many people are quitting.
It's really cool.
Anyway, that's it. I'm sorry.
The last thing I'm going to get to, we'll figure out where do this other thing. Last thing I want to get to before we get to the main topic, I got a message from. We were just talking about Jeff D, our T-shirt guy extraordinaire. He's a super fan. Hadn't heard from him in a while. I got a message from him on Signal, which is like this weird messaging app that I'm not sure why we have to use it.
You and me, I think, are the only people that use it.
Yeah, it's weird, but he really wants us. So, we meet him where he's at.
Right.
That's what we do. And
that's what we do.
I got Signal. And he's like, I got this, story I got to tell you. It's, I think it'd be really good for the show. It's too much to text. Could you call me? And I'm like, I was just thinking about Jeff. So I said, yeah, I'll call you because I'm really curious. I want to hear how Jeff's doing. So I called him, and he basically laid out this whole saga with his wife, Bianca, and they thought it would be really, important for us to kind of talk about it on the show. It involves Kratom. I'm not going to tell the whole story because we're actually going to get Jeff and Bianca on to tell her story, and it's basically the dark side of Kratom. Now, I talk about how much that I love Kratom. I take it with my coffee in the morning. When I don't have it, I'm fine, and it really has just kind of helped me in the same way that coffee does. It doesn't make me high. I don't get dizzy or tired. It's just another. But I take a very little bit, like micrograms.
You're microdosing Kratom.
Yeah, it's and so I, but still, I want all of the stories to be out there. I want to cover all sides of these things, And so Bianca, Jeff's wife, had a really rough experience. She was on Kratom she told me, like 8 years. And then her consumption, she was doing putting like a tablespoon in orange juice or a chocolate shake. But you can, if you do that much of it, it really, you do develop a dependency. And what she found when she tried to stop was she had horrific withdrawal symptoms that Jeff, who, had recovered from heroin, he said he remembers that it looks just like heroin withdrawal and maybe even worse.
Wow.
And so Bianca is actually, they were really great on the phone. And she was like, I'm a writer too. And I'm writing my experience and all of that. And I said, put it on, type it up. Maybe we can, bring this message to the people, the Monksters, and have you guys come and tell the story. And anyway, I'm so happy that Bianca and Jeff got through this. She's got a few days where she's feeling good finally. It's taken her a while to recover. And she's like ready to tell her story. And she also wants to make sure that there's information out there. And now that we have a little bit of reach with this podcast, to get this, because when she was trying to get information about withdrawal from Kratom, there was not much for her to find. So she wanted to catalog and kind of warn people. So
let's definitely get them on the show and soon and have them talk about the experience. I think that would be great.
All right. Well, with that, I think it's time to move on to our main topic discussion. No?
Did we were we going to do the Monksters Speak segment that we
You want to do that now?
promoted in the beginning? Did you have another spot for it? I just saw it on the outline before the main topic. So
the Monksters Speak. Grant, okay, so I put out a post on the private group. If you're on there, if you're not on there, you should join it. We put little thought experiments out there, and people kind of, give their opinions, and we discuss it.
Yeah.
And so I just made a post. I said, is there anything that you guys want me to mention on the show at all? Post it here. Maybe we'll fit it in. And so Grant, there was a couple, but Grant was the first, and I thought it was kind of an interesting topic. He said, he wanted to know like what we thought or to discuss drug and drinking dreams. So like, I don't know, if you're in recovery, I think everybody has experienced these dreams where, you find yourself in an old scenario.
Oh, yeah.
Or one where there's a ton of just, drugs on the table and you do it, and then you wake up and it's confusing. Like, did I just use or I didn't, but is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And so that's what, he wanted us to touch on. So I don't know. Do you have drinking and drug dreams?
I had a lot. I used to have them a lot more. I haven't had them so much lately, but I had one maybe 6-7 months ago that I was smoking crack again, which is weird because I haven't had a crack smoking dream in a very, very, very long time.
Wow. Did you feel it in
yes,
the dream?
I got high.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fucking awesome.
But when you woke up,
I really enjoyed it. When I woke up, I was disquieted, would perhaps be the word I would use. A little freaked out, but I didn't consider it like a relapse or anything. I mean,
this came up in a rehab on one of my outpatients, and I'll never forget what the counselor said because, I don't know, it just resonated with me. Somebody else asked, I had drug dreams. Is that bad? Does that mean I'm deteriorating? Does that mean I'm going to relapse? And the counselor said that the using dreams are usually a normal, healthy outlet for those unconscious and sometimes conscious desires to return to the well-worn neural pathways in the brain.
Okay.
He concluded by saying that what is important to pay attention to is how you react to it upon awakening. Are you relieved? Are you longing for more?
I was totally relieved that I hadn't actually...
So his point was this is just your brain kind of working out things you've done 1,000 times.
Right.
And this is the way it's doing it. And it's sort of a healthy way of working it out.
Well, what does it mean when I have a dream like that after not having smoked crack in 30 some odd years?
It's in your subconscious.
Still kicking around in there.
Unless you saw it on TV and it's in your head. But your brain
Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe I came across... You know what? How could we not doing this podcast? Like, I'm exposed to things here I haven't thought about in decades,
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So that was Monksters Speak. It's my proposed new replacement for,
I like it.
For the Week in Weird to see if we can get people that listen to the back end of the show.
Never replace the Week in Weird.
We're just making the show longer at this point. So with that, we're going on to the main topic discussion, 12 smart things to do when the drugs and booze stop working by Dr. Berger. Just Dr. Berger.
If you guys didn't catch part 1 of this, I would suggest going back to last week and listening to that first, because otherwise this isn't going to make much sense. Basically, last week we started on the review or discussion of the 12 Smart Things book by Dr. Berger. Part 1 was basically, what did we talk about last week? It was sort of a background of emotional sobriety and how it's as important as physical sobriety in terms of keeping... Actually, emotional sobriety leads to continued regular old sobriety.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and vice versa, I think, that this emotional sobriety idea, I mean, it sounds like, when I'm reading this book or listening to this book, he's saying things about emotional sobriety that I'm like, yes, that's what I've been trying to do.
Yes.
And these are the revelations I've been making, and he refers to it a lot as a growing up.
Yes.
I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah.
He talks about how it's sort of like becoming an actual adult, that this emotional differentiation, which means you're separating how you feel and your inner feelings to someone else, something they've said or they've done.
Right.
Or, trying to, and then that is truly growing up, quote unquote, or finally becoming self-actualized.
Well, you keep a strong, a strong central identity that you know who you are, and you're not like some Zelig-like character that just takes on the characteristics of the people around you, both emotionally,
right,
spiritually, physically. I mean, we all do that as humans to some degree, right? We change our personality somewhat depending on the situation we're in, and we do it to get by, to create create any controversy, and sometimes we can take that a little too far to the point where we lose the sense of what makes us us, right? So. The book is called, of course, 12 Smart Things to Do When the Drugs and Booze Stop Working. So we decided that this week we were going to take 4 of those things, because to take 12 would take another 2 weeks probably, and just kind of go through them a little bit and talk about what he has to say about them in the book. So the first smart thing is to know yourself, right?
Know thyself.
Know thyself. I don't like the thy and thou, and it's too biblical.
Know yourself.
Know yourself. So, which really means to be able to differentiate between your false self, right, and your real self. The false self being the self that is
that you project,
that you create based on what everybody else thinks of you to please. What this is at its essence, the false self at its essence is like a distillation of people pleasing, right? But you're willing to compromise your morals, compromise your beliefs just to get along.
Right.
And he has this wonderful example. Probably the best thing, my favorite part of the book, was the example that he gives of the bonsai tree.
Ah, yes.
Yes. Have you ever seen a bonsai tree?
I actually had a bonsai tree in my shop. I really wanted one for Father's Day a couple of years ago, and it died.
It died.
I still have the bonsai clippers. I love bonsai trees.
But you realize what goes into making one of those. Like the bonsai artist, he works, patiently over years to constrain what should be a full-size tree into a tiny version of a tree. It's pretty wild. There's lots of pruning. You have to wrap wires around the branches to shape them. You actually deprive them of water so that their growth is stunted. You trim the roots so it fits into a tiny little pot.
Yeah, I love them.
And such a tree becomes perfect to look at. And yet. I remember that from the narration.
And yet.
Yeah. It's not its true self. It's a tree that's made to conform to a vision of miniature perfection. Isn't that crazy? So we're like those bonsai trees, Every one of us was anxious or hurt in some way, whether real or perceived, as a child, and we developed an image of how we should be in order for the world to love us, a set of rules that if we follow them would make us, quote, perfect. So he says, if we're honest, we'll see that our rules have made bonsai of us, bonsai of the soul.
Huh.
Isn't that crazy? We're so afraid that our true self is like something negative and unlovable,
right,
that we coil our soul with wire, drink just enough water to stay alive, but never enough to quench, and we trim our roots. We spend years warping our true self into a false self. A few of us are really good at it, and we come across to other people as like perfect or perfectionists, but we've actually constrained our true self in an attempt to be loved. What do you think?
I think that sort of encapsulates all of my struggles in sobriety and even beforehand. But these are all of, it's sort of, it really just kind of makes me think a little more closely. I'm thinking more about all of these, like my imposter syndrome we talked about. Who I think I don't deserve what I have, or I didn't earn anything. And if you really knew who I was for real, you wouldn't like me. And going back to when I was very duplicitous in my 2 lives, when it was very pronounced and I was running around, doing addict shit, and then during the day type of thing, a completely different persona. So that persona was what I was, I guess, projecting. I had this perfect ideal, probably based on my father, and that I had to live up to, that I could never possibly. I'll never be my father. I'll never be whoever I'm idolizing. And then, so because of that, being uncomfortable with who you truly are, then it like withers and dies. Like the real you gets so lost,
right,
trying to live up to all of these false selves that
and
we project.
and the crazy thing is, like, they're just rules that you put on yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you have decided that the world has to be a certain way, and you have to behave a certain way, because if you don't behave that way, then people aren't gonna like you. They're not gonna love you. They're not gonna, like, feel warmth towards you. That really kind of hit me over the head, because I veer into perfectionism all the time, and I never really thought about why that was. I always thought I was just like a slightly anal person.
Yeah.
But now I start to, now I'm wondering, like, is this what's going on here? Like,
and I used to always say, if you search for the perfect, if you strive for the perfect, you lose the good. And I think, we're all guilty of this, but I feel like I was doing better than I now believe I'm doing. Now reading
now that you've read the book,
I thought I had really evolved. I thought I had moved past this. I mean, I talked about a couple of weeks ago how I've unified myself. I'm the person I'm projecting, but I'm still feeling like I need to do some more work, a lot more work.
I mean, the source of so much of the inner conflict that we have is because of our, we demand that life as it is conform to this inner vision that we have about how it should be, which of course sets us up for disappointments, because nobody will ever, people are autonomous individuals. They're never going to act like we want them to act because of the set of rules that we've created inside of our own heads. It's like an absurdity to think that people are going to, like, conform to the way that we think they should be.
Right.
And yet, like, I didn't even realize that I was doing that until I saw this, and it kind of hit me over the head. All that Buddhist meditation was apparently for naught.
Yeah. And it goes back to everybody's relationships. I mean, marriages. This is one of the main, if I look back on a lot of our fights early on when we were just kind of getting used to being married, it was a lot of that. Like, one person has an idea of what the proper gender roles are, like what's a man supposed to do, what's a wife supposed to do, how are we supposed to act in public, what are we supposed to do in private,
right,
or whatever. And so one side is coming up with all of these sets of perfections that they're striving for, that was built up over time, watching their parents, watching whoever wherever they saw it, and then the other person has a completely separate list of experiences. And I think part of making a marriage work is coming together, a little bit more, and saying, my standards, maybe it's not going to work for this, and we come up with a real compromise. You're not doing emotional fusion, which he talks about in the book, which is trying to be exactly the same.
No, you can't do that.
You have to maintain.
That's unhealthy too.
You have to maintain your boundary on the things, that are important to you, and also respecting the other person's while not fusing with it, so to speak.
That's very hard to do.
Yeah.
Because
you're always
going it's a very balanced, delicate line. But, I remember reading that, and he gives a lot of examples about, couples and so forth who disagree. And I think that's, valid for relationship advice. Like, I kind of wish he had made it a little more universal to just every human relation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because it's very pronounced in marriages.
It is.
Relationships.
Yes.
So it's easy for most people to say, oh, yeah, that.
Right. But this is something that comes up, like,
sure, in
every interaction with another human being. Like, everybody's walking around with this set of pre-written, what they think are objective rules that they've written for themselves.
So, like, we could look at our relationship and take a look, like, are we doing this? Like, we agree a lot, but maybe...
Is that just to both of us avoid conflict?
I think it might be that. I was thinking...
Do we need to fight more?
Maybe. I was thinking we might need to fight more. But, it's in... Like you said, it's not just in marriages and that it's in everyday relationships. Respecting that other person's, what they are trying to do, and not going over and like absorbing it, but maintaining your own standards for happiness and what you're going for.
Right.
And then, kind of just working together and not, it's very difficult. And he says that in the book, that nobody has perfect emotional sobriety. But he does lay out steps and a process for, working with this and sort of getting past it.
He suggests making an emotional inventory, and maybe going into the details of that are a little beyond what we can do here in the amount of time that we have. So if you're reading the book, you're following along at home, you should check that out because I think that's a useful exercise.
He gives. He says there's a 4-step process.
That's in the second smart thing.
Okay,
which is stop allowing others to edit your reality.
Okay, so, all right. So the second, stop letting others edit your reality. This really resonated with me because I'm learning how to do that, and I've been working on that in my recovery, not knowing that this was part of this book. But, when somebody says something to you or behaves a certain way, not letting it like totally fuck my day and my week. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And not only that, it's also not letting circumstances. Like this morning, we had all the internet issues, and I was really like, okay, now it's time to go to work because I'm going to start to get upset. It's going to ruin my day. And I had to like really say, you know what? That's neither good nor bad. It's just, it happened. And now here's how I'm going to fix it. And it's okay, and I don't have to panic and I don't have to be upset. And so, being able to separate yourself from like, if your wife or boyfriend, has a certain kind of attitude, it's not saying like it's something that I did. You don't make it about you,
right? Which
is part of the next.
Well, that's the whole thing, right? I mean, there's lots of situations where you feel one way about something, and then somebody comes in and influences you, and all of a sudden you find yourself changing your feelings or opinions based on what the other person is doing. You know? And so you're sort of losing your center. Because that's what emotional sobriety is, right? You know yourself. You know where your center is. You can hold on to your center. And, the problem is the emotional dependency. It pulls for a certain kind of togetherness or connection. It makes us all want to feel the same and think the same. And if we're close to somebody, we don't want to create conflict unnecessarily.
You have to stick to your standards, and
but you also demand that your partner or friend feel the same way. That's the thing, right?
You should be emotionally differentiated too.
Yeah,
we should both be.
How dare you be like further back on the evolutionary emotional scale than I am? But like you said, I mean that kind of closeness where you demand that your partner or your friend feel the same way that you do, and if they don't, conclude that there's like some kind of fatal flaw in the relationship, is like it's emotional fusion. It's not like genuine intimacy, right?
Yeah, I mean, but there's also like when you were reading that, I was thinking like, what about if somebody makes like some good points? What if you're having a discussion about something and
you're choosing to be influenced as opposed to being influenced without.
Right. And so this is part of the emotional sobriety that Dr. Berger talks about. It's the differentiation. And he talks a lot about this word and what it means when it comes to cells. And he makes a lot of, analogies and things. But it makes a lot of sense to me. Because if you're emotionally sober, so to speak, it means that you're confident or you're comfortable with your own standards for what makes you happy and the things you want out of life, regardless of what a partner or a friend or a YouTube influencer is thinking or saying, or a politician. But I'd say being open still to other ideas while maintaining your own individuality. And this is true maturity, emotional maturity. And Dr. Berger would argue that emotional sobriety is necessary to maintain like a truly happy, recovered life and just life in general. And I think I agree. I tend to agree.
I mean, it's okay to have different feelings and beliefs about an event than the person that you're close to.
And if somebody, and this is really big right now in politics and people arguing, it's just like, just because we're all guilty of this for the other side, when they have a viewpoint or they believe something that I either find offensive or don't believe in, learning how to, not let that upset me
Right.
emotionally. It's just the way that they're seeing it. Maybe you think they're wrong. That's fine. Problem starts coming when you feel like that person is doing real damage to other human beings. And where do we draw the line? And I think we all sort of know where we're drawing the line deep down inside.
Yeah.
When you hear it, you'll know it. But this has really put me on a definitely a better trajectory. I feel like in my recovery, thinking about, he talks a lot about, like the way that you're perceived by other people and how you perceive how you're being perceived. And it's very meta,
It really is. But, you have to sort of look at it. I mean, he comes up with like a lot. He's very big on like worksheets and 4-step processes to, figure things out. Again, I think that's a little more than we have time to go into. He does have a 4-step process for not letting people edit your own reality. And I think we talked about most of it is like, you become aware of and acknowledge your feelings, your hurt and disappointment and anxiety. You reflect on the cause of the feeling until you understand its source. Then you reflect on what it is you really want in a non-anxious and calm fashion. And finally, the 4th step is to respond to the event that triggered the feelings in a way that both affirms your personal boundaries and yet deals with the triggering event respectfully and responsibly. So...
yeah, I mean, that sounds like a really evolved way to deal with your emotions.
It does.
It also seems completely unattainable.
Yeah, right.
And I was rereading this book, studying it a little bit more when I was doing our notes. And on the Smart Thing 4, which maybe we're jumping ahead, but maybe, we have to. He talks a lot about projections, and this really resonated with me. You hear this all the time with armchair therapists saying things like, you're projecting.
Right.
And people use that a lot. But what does it really mean? Like, what does it mean to be projecting?
Well, I mean, it means that you see in other people the things that are like inside. Okay.
I have a definition.
All right, good. So I'm not fumbling through my own
I actually
brain.
wrote this down. So what it says in the book is projection is a defense mechanism, and it is the act of ascribing to other people the very characteristics in ourselves that we find most unacceptable.
Right.
Pearls, who is, I guess, a writer or a doctor who's quoting, says, in projection, then, we shift the boundary between ourselves and the rest of the world a little too much in our favor, in a manner that makes it possible to disavow those aspects of personalities which we find difficult, offensive, or unattractive. So if you see people as one thing, like they're judgmental, it means that you should look at how you are disavowing your own judgmental nature, and so on.
Right.
If you're complaining that somebody is like an asshole,
Right.
you maybe should look at, are you being an asshole?
Right.
Are you untrustworthy? And so he goes on and says, this is, one thing that we can do to sort of be more aware of our emotional sobriety. And, when you start feeling a certain way about a certain person, like, oh, that jerk is, is being mean or something, maybe you're being mean. Or if that person is too sarcastic that you're thinking that.
Right.
Look at how sarcastic you're being.
It's like when they find like a Catholic priest who's really against gays, like on Grindr.
Right.
Right.
We see that all the time. And it's so with projection, it's this defense mechanism that, through this step process, it's through self-knowledge here. And a lot of times we've said in recovery, self-knowledge, doesn't really get you very far. Mm-hmm. But I'm starting to believe that.
I disagree.
But this is something that they say, like, knowing doesn't help. You just have to do.
Right.
But once you get past a certain point, you really need to explore these things to continue with your recovery. But I think that's a very practical method for kind of looking at if you're doing projection, by when you feel something about a certain person, to quickly look at it. Or as Eckhart Tolle would say, you're observing the thinker.
Mm-hmm.
You're stepping away from your thought and observing it.
Right. So it's hard to do with projection because so much of the stuff that we're projecting is not really part of our conscious thought process. It's all like in the subconscious.
And by definition, subconscious is subconscious.
Right.
So how can you be aware of it?
So before we started reading this book, I was reading a lot about Carl Jung's ideas of doing shadow work. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Mm-mm.
Like it's basically, so each person has their outward facing personality and then they have this shadow, and the shadow is like their Mr. Hyde to you being the Dr. Jekyll. So it's all that negative stuff that is part of us, but that we try not to acknowledge is part of us. So it's like the shadow that we're walking around with. So doing shadow work is trying to identify with the shadow to bring these things up into the light. And one of the ways you can identify these things that are in your shadow is by considering what you're projecting, by constantly saying, that guy's a jerk. Well, then you look at what, why that guy's condescending, so that's maybe I'm condescending.
So there are ways to get insight into your subconscious through your conscious behavior.
Yeah.
And so this is, I guess, telling us that, here's one way to do it, that maybe you can't see or hear your subconscious, but, you can see the symptoms of certain things that are happening in your subconscious, like what he says when that person's, too sarcastic type of thing, and then maybe I am, or that person's condescending.
Like you ever wonder why some people you just have a really visceral dislike of when you meet them.
Yeah, maybe it's something like that.
Maybe it's something like it resonates too closely with something that's going on inside of your own subconscious that you need to take a look at that. I mean, some people are just assholes,
right? True,
right? But it definitely bears a little investigation, in terms of why you have a strong reaction against a situation or a person.
Yeah. So, this is an important step, I think, towards, lasting recovery and being healthy and happy, this emotional sobriety. Send us an email at MikeR@middleagesrecovery.com and tell us what you think about emotional sobriety. Are you reading the book? Now, this is not a book club, but we do review books once in a while, so it would be cool if you guys, maybe if you're reading it, and we could talk about it on the group.
Maybe we can get Dr. Berger to come on.
Dr. Hamburger?
Because do you remember a few months ago when we first decided to start doing these reviews of books and stuff? We said, here's the method to our madness. We're going to do reviews of these books, and then we're going to alert the authors that we've done them, and they can listen to them, and then they'll come on the show.
Yeah,
and that worked.
It worked
with Joseph Naus,
right?
Who we did a 2-part series on his book that he liked, and reached back out to us, and now he's going to be on the show.
That's right.
Did you know that he's going to be on the show at the end of October?
It's a major announcement. Joseph W. Naus is coming to New York. He is flying in to do the show with us. He's a fan of the show. He liked the way we covered his books, and it's been really cool. We're very excited. So he's going to be here in studio, Joseph W. Naus.
He'll also be our first in-studio guest, which is very
an actual
unusual.
Published author,
Right.
And so we're excited about that. But I think we're going to conclude our discussion on 12 smart things to do.
Guys, go get the book. You'll really find it worthwhile. It kind of blew my mind. I don't know about you, Nat, but it crystallized a lot of things that were swirling around in my head and put them all under the rubric of emotional sobriety, which, good stuff.
I really enjoyed it. And with that, we will be right back after these words.
We're back.
Okay.
And the hands of time march on.
The hands of time march on, and if you're still with us, thank you so much. You are now in the smaller group of people who continue to listen past 65%, so thank you.
And you know what they come here for?
What's that?
Recovery in the news.
Yeah! All right! Recovery in the news. Recovery in the news.
Changed it up a little this week.
Mess it around.
Yeah. I had a really hard time picking between two articles this week. The one that I eventually picked was
it from SoberLiningsPlaybook.com?
It was. Yeah, that's my go-to source for news I can use about recovery and addiction.
That was a good one.
Thank you. That is our buddy Grant's website, SoberLiningsPlaybook.com.
Okay.
Go there.
Plug away.
Yeah. Anyway, the one that I passed by was an intriguing story about how people in a certain country in Africa, I forget which one, are apparently taking what is it? They're taking like rust chips from catalytic converters and cutting them up together with pills and snorting them to get high.
Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, that's a new one. But apparently it's led to a rash of thefts of catalytic converters. For junkies are like stealing car parts to scrape the stuff off them to get high.
Wow.
Yeah. Huh. Anyway, that's the one I decided not to do.
Oh, okay.
Because I haven't done a lot of recovery in the news. I've done a lot of
like dying
bad drug
high.
behavior in the news lately.
Guy gets drunk and dies.
So, this is an article from a website whose link I'll put in the show notes, and I don't have right here. I think it was a roundup of.
I put it at the end.
You did? Okay. So it's
Spectrum Local News.
Thank you. SpectrumLocalNews.com. So apparently lawmakers in New York State want to strengthen access to non-religious substance abuse treatment services. And there's a couple of politicians in New York who have proposed this as legislation to give people an option to refer people to non-religious based support groups. So under this proposed legislation, New York courts would be under a requirement to inform defendants of non-religious substance abuse treatment programs. It is proposed in the wake of a spike of overdose deaths that have coincided with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our legislation protects New Yorkers' First Amendment rights and sets them on a path to recovery that aligns with their beliefs. It is important now more than ever, as we've seen substance abuse disorders skyrocket during the pandemic. We have a diverse group of organizations behind us, and I look forward to working with them to pass this common sense bill. That was Assemblyman Harvey Epstein. So it would amend New York's criminal procedure and penal law to create a process for courts that would allow them, a defendant or a person on probation required to complete a substance abuse treatment program, if they have an objection to a religious element of the program, to select a non-religious one. And if the defendant does so, the court must find an alternative equivalent program in which the defendant has no objection on religious grounds.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's good.
I mean, the problem is there's not enough of those. So, like, you can't do this federally because you don't have necessarily. I mean,
it's a chicken or egg thing, right? Yeah. I mean, all AA has sort of a monopoly on. Yeah. They went to the courts and they lobbied the courts to say, send them to us.
They did the work.
Yeah. Well,
and, there they are.
But it's interesting. The one person they interview for the article is the president of Smart Recovery USA, who says the addiction.
He's the main dude. They're the biggest alternative, I think.
They are. Who says people in the criminal justice system must have access to secular recovery support as required by constitutional case law. So I think that's a positive step. I hope the bill passes. I hope it gets signed into law and people have other options.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of it. I have to say, when I was very entrenched in 12-step community and in all of that, I treated other forms of recovery with such suspicion and
mild level of contempt.
Yeah, it's this weird, and I see it today. We don't get a lot of angry emails from people like that, but I know sometimes I'm talking to people, and you can hear that it's anger that comes out. There's a real anger, just the very notion that there could be a way that isn't this 12-step way that you can get recovery. It incenses certain people.
I think they're projecting.
That could be projecting. This is not emotionally sober. And that's why, I think part of my recovery is why we're doing this show when we talk about all these other recovery methods. It's not just about what my recovery method was.
Right.
It's, educating myself and everyone about all of the options and that they're worth pursuing and they should not be met with contempt.
No. There's so many ways to skin that squirrel.
Recovery in the news. Yeah.
Doing it on both ends.
Oh,
now. Yeah. Got to keep the audience engaged at this point.
I wrote Weak and Weird for the last time?
I hope not.
By Tim Banal. Ladies and gentlemen. Wait, why did I write ladies and gentlemen? Pop star Demi Lovato discusses UFO contact experiences and alien beings. Now, she's well known for doing a bunch of recovery shit, right? Didn't she?
She's the California sober one.
Yeah, this is the Demi Lovato, if you don't know about her. she famously has struggled with drug addiction and falling off the wagon and getting recovery, and then saying, "I'm California sober," which means
she smokes weed and drinks.
So not sober at all is the other way of looking at it.
Right.
So here's the story. Leading up to the premiere of their new docuseries, Unidentified, which is centered around searching for UFO answers, Demi Lovato has revealed more about their experiences allegedly contacting the mysterious phenomenon and shared their thoughts on what the alien agenda might be.
Do tell.
In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, the pop star explained that the program was inspired by a, quote, mind-blowing experience that unfolded during a stargazing trip for their 28th birthday. According to Lovato, "We tried to do this protocol where you make contact and all of a sudden something showed up directly above us in the sky."
Is that what she sounds like?
No, I don't know. I wanted to... she's talking about the CE5 protocol, by the way. I actually know what that is, developed by Dr. Stephen Greer. The Wonder Sight, they said, consisted of a series of lights that seemed to form the shape of a question mark before suddenly vanishing into the night sky. Asked if the experience was frightening, the pop star marveled that their response was quite the opposite, musing that, quote, "The feeling you get from these beings is so warm and loving and accepting that it's just overwhelming joy that happens when you're able to make contact."
I guess they didn't select her for anal probing then.
Yeah. You had to go there.
Well, I mean, that's what happens. You get picked up by aliens and they stick things up your ass, right?
So that's Demi Lovato.
You're not answering me.
I don't know if she got it in the ass or not.
I'm not asking about her. I'm asking about alien abduction in general. Isn't that
not always?
Not always.
That's
just old time. That's alien abduction classic.
Yeah,
you get anally probed.
You're talking
organs are removed.
The reason for that is that Benny and Barney Hill were a really famous couple that was in the news about being abducted. They were regressed by hypnosis, and he reported being anally probed, and that was in the 60s. So it's been sort of part of the...
I think maybe that anal probing was not by a UFO. That's all I'm saying.
Right, probably a deep black government program. Yeah.
Okay.
And so thank you, Demi Lovato. And
thanks.
Maybe the last time we do Weekend Weird, I'm thinking about putting maybe Monksters Speak in this spot, and maybe people will actually listen.
Let us know what you think about that. I don't think it's a good idea.
We'll see.
I want to hear more Tim Banal every week.
Weekend Weird. Well, that about does it for today. I know I had a great time. Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much
no
for
place
listening.
I'd rather be.
Visit us at middleagesrecovery.com, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and Twitter. So tweet us at TwatYouTwit. Support your favorite show. Drop a 5-star review. Join our private Facebook group. Buy a T-shirt. And more people are buying T-shirts, so they're starting to go.
Yeah.
Simply write us and say hello.
Not fast enough.
We love meeting new Monksters and chopping it up on the Facebook group. And finally, the best way to help the show is to...
tell a friend.
Share it with a friend. If you get something out of our little show, please share the love and help grow the RMA movement. And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
That's progress, not perfection.
See you next time.
Be good, kids.